Everyone. If you can hear me, we have I think less than 2 minutes to 5 for the class to get started. So I'm just making a call for us to remind our mates by dropping it probably to our WhatsApp groups, our party groups, for them to join so we can get started. Right? So we can just remind them for 5 because at exactly 5 we're going to start. Good evening once again. It's 5 already, and without any much waste of time, I want to welcome you all to today's class. Our facilitator is already in class, and today we are going to be discussing gender and governance. We'll be learning about gender and governance. But before we get started, I'll quickly read the profile of our facilitator, and after that, then we'll give her the floor. So our facilitator for today is Sema, Yvonne Ide. Sema is a lawyer with expertise in communications, policy, gender, grant making, and funds management. 19 years of multi-sectoral experience in developing and implementing integrated programs for government and civil society. Her expertise funds public policy development and implementation, public safety and human security management, women's peace and security, design and implementation of human rights protection mechanisms, facilitating processes for enhancing civil society resilience and natural resource governance. He is the leader of Nigeria's only fund dedicated to human rights defense, where she manages an annual portfolio that supports several frontline grantee organizations and individuals directly and indirectly. He's a policy expert who has worked with the government, business corporations, and non-governmental organizations on implementing people-centered policies to protect citizens before going into development. She founded a law firm where she worked as litigation lawyer doing pro bono work. Here she rendered critical support to bridge the access to justice gap for low-income individuals in underserved communities. Sema's career has been marked by significant achievements, including launching the Heinrich Wells Foundation's Green Academy, a competence building hub for equipping young leaders and activists in Nigeria with the skills and expertise for engaging in poverty reduction and social justice. She has also provided support to civil society organizations in the private sector on harmful effects of solid mineral extraction on host communities. SEMA has also contributed to leading research on energy gaps in Nigeria's primary health centers. Throughout her career, SEMA has consulted for and led teams with several leading bilateral organizations and international NGOs, including OCR, Heinrich Bros, Stephens Global Rights, the MacArthur Foundation, Luminate Group, and the Ford Foundation. He has advised on donor funding priorities, manage programs, supervise partner NGOs, and engage with diverse stakeholders to drive life-changing impact, life-changing projects. SEMA is committed to promoting human rights, enhancing participation, and fostering sustainable development in Nigeria. SEMA is also passionate about sharing knowledge and building capacity. You will find her facilitating training sessions and workshops on diverse topics that promote development in Nigeria and Africa. SEMA works actively to promote feminist leadership platforms and the advancement of inclusive governance. Her expertise spans making, fundraising and management, partnership engagement, stakeholder management, social impact, ESG, legal writing, advocacy, policy formulation, research, community organizing, resource governance, conflict resolution, and gender mainstreaming, with a strong commitment to fostering human dignity and sustainable development. SEMA has a proven track record of formulating policies, conducting research, and providing strategic advice on advocacy for donor engagement in the protection of marginalized and minoritized communities. With a strong academic background and a commitment to learning, SEMA is a starting block fellow and a rising fellow and an Ekman West African fellow. SEMA is an alumnus of Black Vatley School of Government at the University of Oxford. He earned an LLM in law with a focus on international human rights and international humanitarian law, and an LLB in public and international law. Currently, he is a Commonwealth scholar at the University of Oxford, where she's studying for a master's in international human rights law. I know that our mics are muted, but please let's give a warm welcome to our facilitator. Nobody else but Sema Yvonne. Sorry, ma, for pronunciation of the name. Sorry for mother delay. But you have the mic, ma.
Thank you.
You have the
Take over
microphone.
now.
Yes, ma. Go ahead.
And thank you for the very lovely introduction. I didn't think you were going to read all of my profile. I thought you were going to pick snippets on it. I was like, is that me? No, it can't be me. Quick one. Yeah, you were close to getting my name right. My name is Shema Yvonne Ede. So I know if people get thrown off with a T, it's an Ishekiri name. I'm from the Niger Delta part of Nigeria. I'm Ishekiri. So that TS in our names that mean our ancestors intentionally decided to use to confuse the rest of Nigeria and the world. So I don't know, I shared my slides earlier. I don't know if you will share it or do I share my slides? Do I share my screen?
You can go ahead and share it, ma'am. Good to have you.
Okay, good. All right then. So I will, do I have access to share my screen?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so I just want to know, I will need help with this because and get the feedback that some of us might be sharing. So I hope you bear with me with that. Um, is that okay?
Yes, we can see your screen. Yes.
Good. So I was instructed to speak to us about gender democracy and governance and democracy. I feel like really I believe once I was to speak for this topic, I was like, yes, right up my alley. It's what I'm passionate about. I've always been keen on gender and democracy. Do not get involved in governance, and no matter how hard we want to push back against it, we don't get in the politics in Nigeria and with the amazing work all of you are doing in your different spheres. So this is a brief overview of what we're discussing. I'll define a few terms that we yeah, there. I'll share my musings with you. I'm hoping that because I've shared the slides with the Electoral College team, I'm hoping that they can share the slides with you when necessary or if necessary, so I can run through some things and I don't have to read everything line by line. I'm also going to share with you my theory of change and the way forward. So what are the keywords? Gender, democracy, feminism, feminist leadership, and governance. Words that we really don't like to hear, especially with feminism and feminist leadership. But I feel it's critical to the work that we're doing because we've seen over time that just because someone says we want women in leadership or we want equal gender representation in leadership doesn't mean that those people represent our values and they are for development in the region. So what is gender? I present a long etymology of the word, where it started from, what it means, but ultimately it means like something that categorizes you, a class of people. So it always borders on men or women, male and female. So gender issues is what highlights extensive repeated discrimination against women. Give me a second. Yeah. Over the past few decades, therefore, much of the interest in gender relations has been due to feminism, although the term gender is being widely used. And I know people want to try and redefine gender these days and start with, oh, gender is a social construct, gender is, which I'm not going to go delve deep into. I'm just going to discuss gender as male and female without going into the binary, non-binary, and everything else that people have tried to squeeze in between. So when I'm discussing gender, we're discussing male, female issues, gravitating more towards women and how gender impacts women. That's why when we hear gender-based violence, what they mean is that the violence that is being perpetrated against a group of people. That's why where gender is used, the categorizations. So over time, feminists have depicted gender relations as issues of inequality and subordination. Now, what is feminism? Feminism is a social and political cultural movement. And this is what feminism means to me. And that's what feminism means to a lot of people, that aims to achieve gender equality and dismantle systemic oppression and other forms of discrimination. Feminism is not about men versus women, male versus female, people who are minoritized groups, because it's a bigger issue. It's much more than men versus women. It's about oppression, dealing with systemic oppression and the systems that allow and the mechanisms or whatever structures that allows oppression to thrive. Feminism ultimately advocates for women's rights and it strives for equal opportunities, equal access to resources, and the dismantling of patriarchal norms and structures that limit women's choices. So why feminist leadership? Why do I want to discuss feminist leadership? Because it is the practice of embodying feminist principles in our leadership practices, including challenging patriarchal norms and other forms of oppression, promoting equity and making decisions informed by intersectionality and decolonization. Now, let me speak to us about intersectionality. Intersectionality speaks to the many issues that affect us. So, of course, we always say that in the hierarchy of things, in the pyramid of things, men are at the top. In fact, when we want to even bring race relations into it, white men at the top, black men, white women, black women, women with disabilities, women of minoritized groups, poor women. So those are the intersectionalities that we talk about. So you can be a woman who's already experiencing systemic oppression. Then you're now a black woman who experiences some sort of systemic oppression if you're discussing race relations. Take it further to a woman with disability. So you have a disability, you are black, and you're a woman. So that's what we discuss. That's what we say when we discuss intersectionality. Then decolonization speaks to the fact that a lot of our impressions have been, a lot of our ideas and ideals have been impressed by colonialist mentality, white mentality. And oftentimes we're trying to say that we need to decolonize our minds, which is why a lot of times talk about African solutions to African problems. I'm sure you've all heard over time people talk about, oh, Africa needs its own kind of democracy. Nigeria needs its own kind of democracy. The way democracy works in America might not be how it should work in Africa. And so those are the kind of conversations we discuss when we are discussing feminist leadership. How do we ensure that whatever is going on fits us as a group, as an entity that benefits us, benefits the smaller groups, benefits the minoritized groups, and everything in between? Are we together? Thank you very much. So we're saying feminist leadership, let's keep going on. Feminist leadership came in response to patriarchal and traditional power structures that dominated the society. So the feminist leadership style empowers women to challenge hierarchical norms that dictate the lives of men and women across the globe. But I want to speak more to this. It's not it's so while feminist leadership style intends to empower women to challenge hierarchical norms, I want us to understand that even men can embody feminist leadership. It's not just a women thing. Because what we are trying to do is that we are dictating the lives of men and women across the globe, ensuring gender balance and improve gender relations. Feminist leadership also challenges the privilege of masculine leadership. What this means is that we understand that there are privileges that men enjoy because they are men, and it's okay to be aware of those privileges. We can't say, oh, no, 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 it's different. Men do enjoy privileges. And what feminist leadership says is this is what masculine leadership has done. This is how it has affected women in leadership. And this is how we can change it through innovation and modeling. It shows that feminist leadership is a better alternative for the world because truly feminist leadership thinks about all the other groups, and it's not a men versus women thing, but it's the fact that there are groups that will most often be forgotten when most times there's a masculine leadership perspective involved, because if people don't walk in your shoes, people don't understand what you experience, and that's why to approach leadership we need to have a holistic temperament, or a holistic mindset rather towards it. Margaret Mead describes feminist leadership in these words: in the long run, it is the complex interplay of different capacities, feminine and masculine, that protects the humanity of human beings. So we have to understand that both feminine and masculine energies are needed to protect our humanity. And I think that was very profound what she said, because it really truly speaks to the essence of our leadership and the work that we do. Next slide. Why is my laptop not going to? Okay. Now, what is democracy? The word democracy originated from the Greek. I'm sure they've spoken to you about democracy over this time in this college, so I won't speak too much about it. But it says government of the people or government of the majority. Democracy as a state form is to be distinguished from monarchy, aristocracy, and dictatorship. Of course, we know monarchy is one that has to do with kingship and where it's a king or a queen that leads. Aristocracy has to do with where it's a privileged few that lead because of their pedigree. And dictatorship, the worst of them all, is where someone comes and says that they are the king of course, we know dictators, the Stalins and the Moputins and the Idi Amins that have done leadership very poorly. So, of course, we've heard about government of the people, by the people, for the people, but we can put in a way that say government that comes from the people. It is exercised by the people and for the people's interests. So Nigeria's government can be flawed in a way with our primary system, in my own opinion, that only allows a few people to select their leadership. But it's supposed to be from every single person, exercised by the people and in the interest of the citizens as a whole. So this slide goes on to define democracy in the multiple ways, which I don't want to speak too much to, because I know that you should understand democracy. But I want to say that representation is an intrinsic part of what makes contemporary democracy possible. Democracy, since it's about people's interests, for the people's interests, and usually enshrined or thought of by the people, it is very important that representation is a part of democracy. Representation means that every voice is heard, every interest is protected, and everybody that needs to say something is heard. So I'm not reading the chats now. So if anybody has a burning thing to say, please turn off your mic, and you can turn off your mic and just say it out to me, because I can't read the chats right now. So why gender equality? That's another word that we're discussing, because it's a crucial feature of democratic societies. Public institutions must provide services that advance the human rights of women and men equally and consider their specific experiences and needs. Now, when we discuss, a good example is access to healthcare, and this is why feminist leadership is important. When we discuss access to healthcare, how do you ensure that public institutions provide access to healthcare that protects women and men equally? Do we understand that if you put a primary health center in a community that takes people by foot 1 hour to get to the primary health center because the road is bad, with a bike it will probably take you like maybe 30 45 minutes, and it's just hard to access that public institution. Do you think, especially when it's a primary health care center, do you think about how a woman in labor in the middle of the night has to have a baby? How is she going to get there without losing the child? Those are the things that we must think about in advancing human rights of women and men. Do you think about access for persons with disabilities when we're doing that primary health center in the community? So those are the kind of things that we think about, that we ought to think about when we are discussing feminist leadership. And that's why we advocate for women's political empowerment. to ensure that decisions are credible and legitimate. Because when women and men share power to make decisions and lead, the benefits are felt throughout their communities. Because women will see things from a different perspective than men will see it. And it's very important that both voices, and again, like I said earlier, intersectionality always has to come to play. Not just women, but women from different demographics, young women, older women, the elderly, the women with disabilities, every woman in the group, the Muslim women, the Christian women, the non-religious women, everybody has to be a part of the conversation. Otherwise, we will only find ourselves, which we've done over time in Nigeria, catering for a select few. So going on, governance is the process of decision making and the process by which decisions are implemented or not implemented. That's what governance is, decision making processes. It can be used in several contexts like corporate governance, international governance, national governance, local governance. We've heard that word multiple times, but ultimately it is the process of decision making and by which decisions are arrived at. So the government is one of the actors in governance. Other actors involved in governance vary depending on the level of government that's under discussion. So we have different actors. There are formal actors, informal actors. We always hear that word stakeholders. So it depends on where you're looking at governance and where we are in the governance playbook. But we need to understand that there are different elements of governance that come to play. Major characteristics of good governance. It is participatory, which means that everybody's involved in the process, every stakeholder. It is consensus oriented, which means that it's not just one person that makes a decision. Everybody comes together to decide on it. It is an accountable form of governance. It is transparent and it is responsive, which means that you're responsible towards the people which means that you are transparent with the people that you're leading, you are accountable to them, and whenever they have feedback to you, respond to it. We've seen that over time with a few of the government leaders and a few other parastatals on X and on social media where they respond to citizens and the feedback they get from citizens. We can do better. A lot more institutions can do better. A lot of them don't even engage with citizens. And that is bad governance. Your ability to not think that you are better than a few because than the majority of the population because you happen to be in a seat in government is quite dangerous. Governance is effective and efficient, it is equitable and inclusive, and follows the rule of law. The rule of law is, what does the law say? Constitution is our ground norm. How does the law describe how our means and practices, and does your governance practice enshrine that? If our governance practices don't enshrine following the rule of law, then we have a problem. Good governance ensures that corruption is minimized, the views of the minorities are taken into account, and the voices of the most vulnerable in society are heard in decision making. It is also responsive to the present and future needs of society. We can make decisions and think, okay, it's just now, it's just today, this is what we need for today. We always have to think about the next 40 years, the next generation, 20 years from now, our children's children. What kind of future are we leaving for them? What kind of debt are we leaving to them? Those are the kind of things that good governance basically makes us think. So this is just a run through of it. Participation, both men and women, is a key cornerstone of good governance. Rule of law. Good governance requires fair legal frameworks that are enforced impartially. Transparency rather. Transparency means that decisions taken and their enforcement are done in a manner that follows rules and regulations. It's not an arbitrary decision-making process, and good governance requires that institutions and processes try to serve all stakeholders within a reasonable time frame. So this is me just thinking about, so that I shared a paragraph on my musings. I was thinking about elections, constitution, and gender, and how the inclusion of women in legislative pronouncements are long overdue. And what better way to start than with the Constitution? I remember I talked about representation in the beginning. While the Constitution prohibits discrimination based on sex and the gender gap in educating girls is steadily closing, we still have a long way to go in Nigeria. There is significant gender disparity in our labor laws, women's participation in government, and so on. And I'm sure you've seen that. Nigeria's labor laws, for instance, says that women can't work by a certain time of day they work in factories. There's lots of things in our laws that I think the intention in the beginning was to be protective of women. Why can't we just obey the law? And so those laws that were meant to protect women, because I want to believe that was the intention behind those laws, have now become discriminatory against women and impeded their access. And so people say, oh, well, it's just semantics. And for me, it's a thing where the Constitution generally uses, if he wants to find an office who wants to for an office, he has to be a he's, him, and there are no female pronouns. That worries me because while we say it's just pronouns, doesn't mean that a woman will be stopped from running for office. It's just very critical to understand that society is not made of he's alone and hims alone, but also made of he's and hers. Thank you. We can always read this later. So while women represent about half of Nigeria's population, but occupy less than 10% of political positions, we have persistently been at the bottom of the food when it comes to income earning. And the gender pay gap does exist. For instance, women don't get paid for home care, like the care that the work that they do in their homes, in providing for their making their homes livable, caring for the children. They don't get paid for it. But if we're going to get a babysitter or a housekeeper, you will pay them. But you feel, why should a woman get paid for that work? So unpaid family care and all those things are what have contributed to the gender pay gap and to the fact that women are low income earners in the country. Gender inequality permeates every level of Nigerian society, including the political sphere, and we can't do anything about it. Like it is what it is. We can push back against it, but until we intentionally start to fight it, we will always have this problem that gender inequality is a problem, and we have to be intentional about combating it. Now, I remember reading a report a while ago. I searched for the report. I searched everywhere for it online. I couldn't find it, but it was so clear. And I remember reading it because I remember I was sitting in the meeting when the UNDP launched this report, and they drew a link to development and women in leadership, saying that they've noticed that societies that have more women in leadership tend to be more developed. Excuse me. Excuse me. And so that was an interesting thing to think and ponder over. Like, why is it that societies and women that have women in leadership tend to be more developed and are quicker to access education, healthcare, and everything else that encompasses development? It means that there's something wrong with our leadership style here in this part of the world, and we need to steadily look into ourselves inwards to find out how we can change that. So furthermore, women and girls with disabilities have been disadvantaged over time, with society ignoring their contributions or not even allowing them to contribute to the economy, politics, or education. Like, it's a lot of times you find people saying, why should the woman, you don't even want to listen to a woman with a disability. There's even no access for her to enter into those rooms. Most people would rather educate their sons or their sons or even nieces or nephews than educate a woman with disability. And that is quite sad because we now deprive ourselves of the gifts that people have to give to the world. So what are my recommendations for promoting gender democracy and gender equality solutions? So first of all, issues facing women in politics and leadership, finance. And I know we've talked about finance for a long time, and we've talked about how finance is a problem, and it's an important issue for women, not only in women's civil society organization, but also for women in politics. More resources are needed for women politicians to launch campaigns and for initiatives that work with women in politics to build constituencies and capacity and to ensure that structures are in place to support cross-party platforms, which create stronger connections between political representatives and women's organizations and movements. And can I just ask, and this is where feminist leadership comes to play, where even when we are pushing for women in leadership, we need to be careful about the kind of women we push for in leadership. I don't think I want a women minister for women affairs who is focused on building herself, distributing cups and pans and wrappers. Like, that is not what people need. Because of the poverty, and that's why people often use the term weaponization of poverty. Poverty has been weaponized for so long that you feel like a woman leader who comes with rice and beans, and she comes with these things, and meeting is and wrapper with her face on it. That one even blows my mind. I remember this current minister. I am not shading her, but I found it a bit interesting. When she was celebrating 100 days in office, I remember seeing a paper bag, a souvenir that I think he had mugs, he had paper, it was different things, and he had her face on it saying 100, celebrating 100 days in office. And I asked myself, did she take all the money to do this thing out of her pocket, or did she do this out of with government resources, for instance? Is that what women really need? Is that what women really need? What about providing access to credit? What about providing access to markets for these women who are farmers? What about providing opportunities, education? What about providing even access to education for these women's children? Like, those are the bigger issues that affect women, not wrapper, not cup, not souvenirs, not mugs. Those things, why people clamor for them because they are souvenirs. Ultimately, it is not what we need. A lot of people can't push back because people don't even understand what the needs are. It doesn't mean that it is okay because people are receiving and say, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Why are you saying thank you? Is it not your tax money and government money that is being used to pay for all of these things? They are not bringing this money out of their pockets. And so that's why we must understand what is feminist leadership. Like these women in leadership, are they feminist leaders or are they women who are occupying positions because they are women? I am not trying to dispute women in office. I am not, but I'm saying that we really need to think through and through about what we want, the kind of leaders we want to be, the kind of leaders we want to aspire to be, and the kind of leaders we want to show our children that we can be. Going on, beyond financial resources, women in politics need human resources in terms of campaign staff, strong social networks on which they can draw for support, partnerships with mentors, and male champions and allies within the parties. We can't do anything without the men. I say it repeatedly, we can't do anything without the men. And we must always have the men as our allies, and we must always have male champions. Beyond finances, human resources cannot be quantified. The value of human resources cannot be quantified. You need campaign staff, you need people on the streets, you need boots on the ground that will go out there and speak about you, speak about your work, and rally the kind of communities you need to get you the votes that require. Of course, the media is also another thing. It's a critical resource for women politicians, women civil society, and gender equality advocates. More investment is needed in amplifying their voices in the media and building women's capacity to participate both in traditional and emerging forms of media. A lot of times, women, grateful for social media and what has been able to, and how it has been able to democratize access to information. But we understand that mainstream media is also important to get the stories out there. How do we ensure that we put women's voices out there? How do we ensure that even access to the media is not so expensive? Because it's a vital channel for women's voices, and it provides a means for them to demand for accountability as well. So we need to frame our demands and to demand accountability, frame our demands, exchange experiences, and develop strategies for change. Even doing interviews, doing conversations, sitting down in all these TV stations and just having interviews. How do we create access to this kind of platforms for women so that their voices can be heard as we engage the democratic process? There's a lot that needs to be done to realize the promise of new media for women's empowerment and gender equality. Now, what's my theory of change? Let me be sure. My theory of change is that women's participation is a central element of democracy, and the nature and degree of women's participation is a key indicator of the quality of our democratic culture. If women are not generously represented, then it will reflect in the nature of the quality of our democracy. If they are generously represented, it will also reflect in the quality of our democracy. Women's movements also play a vital role in deepening democracy because holding the state accountable to gender equality and ensuring that laws and policies on women's rights translate into real changes in women's lives. And I'm very big about access to healthcare and access to education. So much money is going into security, that we are even missing the fundamental and critical parts of even a good society, access to healthcare, access to education. And now there's been a systemic attack on our education and our healthcare, and that has made Nigerians very sick, unable to engage the process, and very poor. And this doesn't help because all that security that we're ensuring, we don't understand that we're putting so much money in security, neglecting education and everything else, without an understanding that once we put all that money in security, the fact that people are not educated, people don't have access to healthcare, people are poor, people are sick, they are also going to become a security threat in the future. And so there's a need for us to balance out funding and how we ensure that people have access to all of these things. So I want to read a quote. It says, if a democracy neglects women's participation, if it ignores women's voices, if it shirks accountability for women's rights, it is a democracy for only half its citizens. And I agree with Michelle Bachelet, the executive director of UN Women, because we really have to ensure that all voices are heard in the process. Now, what are my solutions? Or my thoughts on solutions? And I'll be happy to hear your solutions in the chat box as well, to see your solutions in the chat box as well, because I feel like there are a lot more solutions than what I have put out here. So some of our solutions is use temporary special measures such as quotas. Remember, I note that I say temporary special measures because we can't always say use quotas as a yardstick, but it's a way to start to increase women's political participation. But recognize that quotas are not in themselves sufficient to bring about gender equality in politics. To be effective, quotas and other temporary special measures need to be coupled with support for women's leadership and voice to promote women's political participation, including in holding elected officials to account for commitments to gender equality. Another solution is invest in political apprenticeship. And I like what the Electoral College is doing that because they are investing in political apprenticeship, right? And mentorship for women in civil society and political parties to build women's political leadership. That is so important. That while we are building this leadership and political leadership, it's very important that women's political leadership is built in a way that we have apprentices and we have mentorships and people are accountable to people are people that they aspire to, so that we just have a system that works, a system that's like a well-run machine. Increase support and financing for women's organizations and women's movements to enable women to build political consciousness, develop practical organizing skills, and develop grassroots constituencies. Strengthening capacity for building support for elected women, as this will empower them to have more impact on decision-making processes. So it's not just enough to get women in office. How do we strengthen their capacity? It would be nice to see training programs for just women in Senate, women in the House of Reps, and just helping them to build their capacity. What do you need? How do we ensure they have more impact on decision making? Do you need the masses around you? Do you need us to build a following around you? Do you need us to just even make noise about your bills, your ideas, your proposals, so that even if they want to shut you up in the house, there are people out there who are holding the rest of the government accountable? It is also crucial to work with women in all related areas, including politics, to shift attitudes and perceptions and work towards greater gender equality in politics. I'm going on with solutions. Challenge gender stereotypes and work on creating a culture of zero tolerance, both direct and indirect gender bias. So what are gender stereotypes? Automatically presume that the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs should be a woman. Automatically presuming that the Minister for Women Affairs should be a woman. And I understand people want women in those leadership positions, but I will always say feminist leadership. Oh, women cannot lead defense. Oh, women cannot lead certain sectors because they are masculine. And the question becomes, what makes the masculine sector? And why do you think that women cannot lead? Like, I would like to see a minister for health who is a woman, because I feel like I believe that women will most likely understand how to do leadership, what access to healthcare is, democratizing. I think the current minister is a woman. Minister for State is a woman anyway, which the president has done well with, if I must say so myself. So yeah, creating a culture of zero tolerance of both direct and indirect gender bias within political parties and the wider political culture. Ensure that women politicians who face harassment and violence have access to justice and remedies, not just justice. Work with the mainstream and new media to ensure women are represented more fairly. Even the way the stories are told about women, Mrs. This, my clickbait, my job is to take care of my husband. Even as a politician, my job is to take care of my children 5 times a day. ABCD. She led her company to greatness. She led this government to great when she was a commissioner. These are her achievements as a commissioner. Let's not try to reduce women into the kitchen and to the home. While those are important roles, there's more to a woman than that. And the media is very good at telling those kind of, even with I see them trying to push those stories out a lot of times. And I feel like it diminishes the achievements and the successes of women that they've achieved over time. And that for me is how we need to start even changing our narratives. Ability to tell stories differently will help us shape how we deal with women and represent women's political leadership. Second, finally, strengthen the overall accountability of democratic constitutions to women and gender equality by improving the transparency and accountability of public officials and institutions that gender equality. That's what a lot of us have. When they are running for office, oh, I'll do this for gender, I'll do that for gender. But when they get into office, those gender equality commitments are not met. How do we make sure that we hold them accountable to meeting those commitments? By public officials, I don't want to see a banner that discusses leadership in Nigeria and there are 9, 10 men on the platform and they are all men on the platform. Are you saying women cannot speak to leadership? They can. Ensure that women know their rights and are aware of the laws that protect them, and that they have access to effective channels for demanding accountability and claiming their rights, both individually and collectively. Finally, encourage political parties to strengthen internal regulations and laws from a gender perspective, include language on gender equity in their platforms, set targets for women's participation in their conventions, adopt internal voluntary quotas in the absence of legal quotas, and ensure that women candidates can access financing and other supportive resources during their campaigns. Thank you. So I intentionally wanted to run through this in 30 minutes so that we can have conversations on what we are doing. I feel like I want to first of all hear your ideas. I also know that some of you might have feedback on why you think things can be done differently. And I would very much like for us to be as interactive as possible and share our ideas, questions, and reservations. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma. Thank you for that enlightenment, and it was educative and insightful. So quickly, if you want to speak, you have any questions or comments, let's do it this way. You can indicate by raising up your hand, right? Then you are going to be asked to unmute and speak, or if you can't speak, you can use the chat box. We'll read it out, right? So you can just indicate by raising up your hand. The floor is open already, so if you have any questions, you can just indicate. Not just questions, comments, you know. Okay, Olutunji, please, you can unmute and ask your question.
Uh,
Timothy, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Actually,
Afternoon.
I am not asking question. I want to actually add to what the facilitator had actually done, and she has done a very fantastic job. So, but then it's still more of a challenge, like she had mentioned, like some of the ways we can actually encourage female participation and feminist leadership, as the case may be. And she was talking about, I could recall she mentioned quota, and I know another one is talking about affirmative action. But the fact remains that women need not wait for all of this. Even if all of these are in place, yes, very good. But I feel they don't need to wait for those things even before mobilizing themselves. And one thing is, most times, political participation is very common among the minority group. And if you are to talk about power sharing in terms of balance of power in Nigeria, so women are more or less minority group. I don't know, depending on the individual perspective. And that should actually be a kind of encouragement. I think that should actually be a kind of encouragement for women to actually participate more. But unfortunately, we are yet to see that. Like, take a very good example in our Senate. I observed that, okay, though we really have good number of women there, but in the current Senate, we have, I think, about 4 women. And at different times, some of these women had encountered one challenge or the other. But it is observed that each of the time they had this challenge, they do not speak for one another. And that is how it started. You are about 4 out of 109, and one of your people has a serious, and those challenges has to do with gender issue. I could recall in the case of Kingibe, something relating to gender, and I could recall a number of times that the Senate president will be using some languages, as in like talking about the. I could recall at the point when he was asking if they were in the nightclub or something like that, referring to one of the female senators. And unfortunately, when each of those things actually happen, you see other female senators keeping quiet. And I could recall that Senator Natasha, at a point, she was alleging that most times she wanted to talk, she was quieted. And even at a point, she had some views, but every effort to see that seeing the light of the day was not successful. But unfortunately, at the heat of all of those arguments, instead of seeing women actually, even if not talking about the allegation of the molestation, but you can talk about the allegation of the fact that she claimed that she was not allowed to actually bring up her motion and her request, as the case may be. So the bottom line is, I feel it is very important that women should actually, like, if you see voter turnout, we see that most times women even form a very important percentage of the voter. Even most times when you see many of these party meetings, women are the majority. Then it is high time they actually develop this interest. So it's like many of them, they are fearful and they are complacent. But it is high time they actually take advantage of this, their number. I don't think it is out of place if we will have a female center there, political party or political group that will sponsor some female candidates. At least by so doing, at least you can see more women showing interest. And at the same time, I feel it is high time women began to trust fellow women, because I wonder if we have such a large number of women in party meetings voting, but at the end of the day, they would prefer voting for men instead of voting for women. And most of the time, from when we see few women winning, we see that at the end of the day, they choose
Okay, sorry, Mr.
the
Timothy.
agendas
Sorry to interrupt.
set by men instead of
Mr.
setting agenda for their own cause. So that's my
Mr.
contribution
Timothy,
for
can
now.
you
Thank
hear
you,
me?
everyone. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Just to make something clear, right? Please, can we be mindful of time? Others are
Okay.
waiting
Yeah.
and
I'm
want you
okay.
to
I'm
speak
okay
to. So,
now. Yeah.
okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. So,
Yeah.
just to other speakers, those who are going to speak after Timothy, please let's try as much as possible to put our thoughts together so we don't prolong and stretch the issue beyond our own time, right? We're working on a time clock. Thank you so much for your
Please,
I
can
don't know
I
if
quickly
you want.
respond to what he said?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, of course.
I would like to really thank you, Timothy, for your feedback. And what you said is something I've heard ever so often. And I always push back on that. An injustice is an injustice, whether to a woman or a man. So you don't have to wait for a woman to speak against an injustice that is done to a woman. If an injustice is done, a man can also speak to the injustice. Because a lot of women have come out to protest when men have been threatened. Women don't say, oh, since it's a man, let the men fight their battles. Women come out. And you made that point when you said women vote for men, even when they call out these gatherings. Because they believe in a certain cause. Women, and that's the point I'm trying to make. Feminist leaders are not necessarily women alone. Feminist leaders can also be men, understanding that we are battling systemic oppression. And so, if there was an injustice done to this woman, why do you expect three other women to speak? The majority is already against her. And that's why we talk about male allies and the importance of male allies. And I said that earlier. And so, I believe that it was even more of the responsibility of the men to speak to that injustice that was done to the women when the injustices were done and say, no, this is wrong. We shouldn't do this. Now, I also want to remind you about what I said earlier, and that was about the gender pay gap and access to finances and access to credit, and how that even affects our access to political office. And so when women who have spent 10 years, 15 years of their life in doing unpaid family care work, how do you want them to get the kind of money and finances to create the kind of impact that you speak about? And that's why we need to build platforms. And I said that earlier. They need to build platforms. I need to build organizations and systems that help women to thrive. So we need to understand that access to funding is not only allowing women do things like they would like to do things. So if women say, because truth of the matter is, and that's where I push back against women distributing rice and beans, because when they come and they're distributing rice and beans and giving women food to eat, see their value, and who don't even vote for them in leadership, because the thing that not women are going to give them food, and either women will give you food to eat anyway. But if women start to be more assertive in the way they express leadership, then maybe we can be able to have the kind of, I don't want to use the word respect, because respect is not it, but the kind of recognition needed to create the impact that we need to create. But I'll be honest and say that we can't do this without our male allies. And so I am a serious opponent to the phrase women don't support women. I hate it. I really hate it. I hate when people say women don't support women, it's women that should be against themselves. If a woman can't speak for you, they won't expect to speak for you, us. And when you see an injustice done to a woman, please don't wait for another woman to do it, because maybe the woman too is also experiencing oppression and doesn't even know how to push back against oppression. Maybe that is where she needs male champions, and I spoke to it. Maybe we need male champions to even help us to make that noise that we're unable to make because we're experiencing oppression. So that is my caveat to Olatunji's speech. I hear what you're saying clearly, but I feel like, and I know that men also have a role to play in this as well. So I think I'll wait for like maybe 3 people's feedback before I respond, so I don't slow the process and I can answer a lot more questions at the same time. Over out.
Okay, thank you.
Peace, over to
Thank
you.
you so much, ma. And that is why I think we have the he for she. Okay, so Solota, you can unmute and ask your question.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, our presenter. I just want to react to that women are marginalized. I think that been, for me, is imaginary and in some way. My own industry, Nollywood, when they call for auditions, they tell you they prefer to have more females than male. Look at marketing roles too. Most times they tilt more towards the female gender. Now, in the traditional African society, we've had women leaders, women warriors who are leaders, frontliners for countries. So I think maybe over time, in modern society, I don't know how the narrative got in. Men are marginalized, women are marginalized, children are marginalized, all strata of society, they have marginalization in different phases. What we need to do is find a middle line. Also, in your presentation in the musings about, I think, the Constitution, where he was talking about Section 26, that stated that I think he was used. I think the pronoun he or she is more cultural. For instance, people are not raising eyebrow over Statue of Liberty, over the justice, lady justice, the symbol we have in court. That has been over time, and it was taken after the Greek goddess. In terms of fecundity, in terms of productivity, goddesses and god. So sometimes when we drive this narrative, we might probably bring more division rather than try to bring us together, harmonizing our strength together, like you preach in intersectionality. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, madam, for the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Sulata, for also keeping it short. Mr. Ojo, can you unmute and speak? Ojo Semasa. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, and good evening once again.
Good evening.
Yeah. So my question is, in Africa here, and even Nigeria, the word feminism or feminist, it has been commonly abused, and then we tend to have more of the extremists carrying it on their head. So we've once created inclusivity in this XVII program. We said that, but the word feminist leadership wasn't used.
You're a bit low. I don't know
You're
if you're
rather
using an
faint.
earpiece. Can you speak to? Yeah.
You're rather
Okay.
faint.
Okay, is it better now? Is it better now?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Go ahead.
Okay. I said we've once treated gender inclusivity in this ECN program among some other lectures we've had, but the word feminist leadership wasn't used then. So my own concern is what is the assurance that those extremists won't hijack this kind of leadership, or they won't start, I don't know, maybe gallivanting or trying to use it to push their agenda further if we adopt, I don't know, that name, feminism leadership or feminist leadership. Right? I believe in gender balance, gender inclusivity very, very much. But because that very word had been so much abused in this part of the world. So that's my concern and that's my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Ojo. We'll take Mr. Maxwell, then you respond, Ma. Maxwell, you can unmute and ask. Maxwell, I've asked you to unmute. Okay.
Hey, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yes, thank you very much, Ma, for the insightful session. I want to talk about one of your recommendations, which says it would be nice to empower women-led organizations. I think to me, that's one of the biggest. That's going to be one of the biggest or our strongest standpoint when we talk about women, because in any gathering when you want to talk about this conversation, around women, you discover that men will still outnumber women in those places. When they go back home, they will return to the issue of patriarchy, where the men at home will still have the final decision to wherever the conversation about women took place. So this conversation it's hindering so much on organizations that are championing the cause of women. So that recommendation is top notch to me, and I feel women have a lot of potential that they themselves do not know about, because a lot have been said, a lot have been written, conversations have been had. I don't know, but I feel the 21st century women need to go back to the about women riots of 1929 and look at what happened. Women, they need to look inward, because so much have been said. And when you look at any gathering, I put it to you, you discover that the number of women will surely surpass that of men. And it's like that in even in the political space, women are actively participating. So I feel women, they need to stand up for themselves. They need to stand up for themselves. Let's take this class we're having, for instance. If you take the data or statistics, the men will still outnumber the women. I don't have it correctly, but I think it's going to be like that. At the end of the day, imagine if at the community level, when you go back home, the men will still have the final decision. So women need to look inward themselves. Conversations like this need to be put out to women more, so they can look at their potential and take the bull by the horn. All right, so thank you. That's my contribution.
Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you
Mr.
for the
Maxwell.
feedback,
Now you can
Maxwell.
go ahead. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Pace. So I'm going to run this backward. Start from the last person to the last person who spoke to the first person who spoke. I also want to say that I'm not hearing women's voices and their questions. Just putting that out there. So Maxwell, to your point, and this
No,
is
replace it.
in the background. Is it possible for you to do that, admin? Thank you. Good. So I think what we should start with understanding is that when you say women need to look inwards, women don't. I understand where you're coming from, and I need to remind us of. Let me go back to what I said. Systemic oppression. The fact that over time, women's voices have been silenced. That it's only recently women are starting to voice their concerns. And so when you say women need to look out, then they can thrive. Because the men are still going to overwhelm the room. Yeah, right, to an extent, but I need you to understand that his example, and I'll give you that example that happened to me. I was leading a Green Academy Fellowship for Young Activists, and I remember putting out a call for applications. I was intentional about putting out the call for application because I wanted to go. And I remember during the nominations, I saw a lot of people nominating themselves, mostly men. They would nominate themselves. In-house, I had decided I wanted to be a 60-40 ratio because I wanted to give more women an opportunity to get into this program. So I knew it was going to be a 60-40 ratio. But what I found interesting was that after the nomination process, there were way more men than women that were nominated. And so when I now invited them to apply, I made sure it was 50-50 by the time I was inviting them to apply. So when I invited them to apply, I realized that there were more women who applied than men. And so the women, 50-50 opportunity given to the men, more women are to the men and the women, more men applied compared to the women. Further, I realized that, and the disparity was much, percentage ratio was much, but because it was going to be a 60-40 percentage, I had to, at a point, even go and call out to women outside of women who hadn't even applied to say, can you apply for this program? I need more women in this program. So yes, we have a gap there in women taking up spaces, and I've written about it so many times. And I think Dr. Obi spoke to it sometimes, saying that sometimes women restrict themselves in the process. But I need us to understand history. A woman who has done unpaid work for 15 years of her life, waited till her children were like 20 or 18 before she went out there to start to look for things for herself. How do you think she can engage with a man whose life has been politics? It's the same thing that goes with job applications, where a job application, a call for vacancies is put out there, and we now have women, and you see the list of things that qualifications are required. A man can see only 3 qualifications and they will apply. A woman will not apply for the role. If a call for pastors is even put out there, oh, we need pastors in the church, men will apply for pastors. Even Muslim men who need a job will apply for pastor role. But women may say, if the pastor, they want a man, and so they won't apply. And that's why I can talk about language, he, she, the ideal candidates. When you put he, she, it already holds women back to say they want a he, they don't want a she, so I'm never going to do this. And so if you have an understanding of this, I think that we all owe ourselves a responsibility. I don't say women owe themselves a responsibility, women owe other women. I think we all as humans owe ourselves a responsibility for a better society, to ensure that everybody is carried along the democratic process. That's why it's called a democracy. Everybody is represented. If there are not enough women, which is why I talk about feminist leadership, because feminist leadership is much more than just a woman in leadership. We've seen feminist men too. Which now will take me to the other point of the person who had a problem with the word feminism, and he says this is the first time he's hearing feminism. I'm happy to know that I'm the first person who brought the subject feminism, because feminism is very important to me and it's very important to our leadership style. But I want to read to you what I said about feminist leadership. It is a practice of embodying feminist principles in our leadership practices, including challenging patriarchal norms and other forms of oppression, promoting equity, making decisions informed by intersectionality and decolonization. I think I want to share my screen with this one. I need you to see it while I speak, because I want this to really sink in for you to understand why we are here in the first place. It's much more than an agenda, because I remember hearing you say, how do you make sure that the women's agenda and they don't push their agenda? It is much more than an agenda that women are trying to oppress or trying to surmount men. It is about promoting equality, about achieving social justice, about making sure that all forms of oppression are systematically destroyed. This is what feminist leadership is about. It's about pushing back against oppression. So it's not about in this part of our world, in that part of our world. In every part of the world, everything is abused. It's not just a Nigeria thing. So we can't say because the way Nigerians practice feminism doesn't mean that feminism is a bad thing. And so let's not discuss feminism. And now let's go back to feminism. It's a social, political, and cultural movement that aims to achieve gender equality and dismantle systemic oppression and other forms of discrimination. It advocates for women's rights and strives for equal opportunities, equal access to resources, and the dismantling of patriarchal norms and structures that limit women's choices. And now let's talk a bit about patriarchal norms. And I want to speak just a little bit about this to you. Sometimes we do not understand that patriarchy is just as evil on the man as it is on the woman. It's patriarchy that puts a pressure on a man and says if a man cannot provide for his family, then they call him all sorts of names without understanding that maybe they should have a partnership with their significant others. It's patriarchy that makes a man think that he's 17 and his girlfriend is 17. They're both 17 years old, but he thinks that he has a responsibility of a 17-year-old like him. From where to where? That's patriarchy. And so it's just as harmful to men as it is to women. And so feminism is saying that we have to intentionally destroy systemic oppression. It wasn't always like this. Something changed in our history. And understand that something changed in our history that puts women down there. Because ordinarily, naturally, it makes sense. If a woman has a child, she's off for 9 months of pregnancy, depending on how pregnancy treats you. Then after 9 months of pregnancy, you now have to wait for a while to take care of your child. So your journeys will not be the same. And it's okay to understand that women and men do not have the same journey. But we also cannot say because of that, women should not have access to the things that they want. They shouldn't aspire to dream. I think that's an unfair notion, and it's important that we disabuse our minds of things like that. I also want to speak about marginalization of women and the whataboutism I heard by the last person that asked the question, the person who said it works in Nollywood. Now, what is whataboutism? It's a phrase I often use to say how people, it's a phrase I use to imply, let me reconstruct this word in my head. Whataboutism, a good example of whataboutism is, oh, women don't have enough jobs in a certain sector. But what about marketing? And what about that? And so we take away from the fact that there is a problem somewhere. You say, well, if they have a problem here, what about this other place? And whataboutism is a problem to our development. It's a real hindrance to our development. And I'll tell you why. Because when you say in Nollywood, they want more women, what are the roles they are looking for? Is it a role that is more centered on women? When you say in marketing, they want more women, why do they want more women? We also understand that even in society, there are some roles that women will gravitate towards, nurturing roles, teaching, nursing. Those are roles that women will naturally gravitate towards because women probably are better at doing that because that is how God has designed us. That's our DNA. Does it mean that women cannot do other things? No. Does it mean that men, that's why when we see men who are nurses, sadly, some of us laugh at men who are nurses. Say, you're a man, you're a nurse. Why is a man a nurse? Which is quite ridiculous in my own opinion. Because now we've just gone to marginalize someone and put people in a box and say, because you're a man, you shouldn't do certain roles. And that is in itself a problem. You can't say because women do this and women do that, that means that we are being unfair and saying that women don't have opportunities. No. Are there enough women in political leadership? No. Are there enough women in political appointments? No. Yeah, I agree with you. Why should a man be a chef and a hairdresser? But it is what we are talking about, gender stereotypes. And I said that earlier. We have to push back against gender stereotypes. Allow people to do what they want to do because they have the capacity to do it, not because they are men or they are women. And that's what feminism is saying. Don't put people in a box and perpetuate inequality because you feel like a person is incapable of doing something. So if we're discussing women in political leadership, we're discussing gender, we're discussing governance, we're discussing the fact that access to healthcare is not where it should be because we are not having feminist leadership to think about the leaders who think about the fact that you can't put a primary health center in a community that's 1 hour away from the community itself. So when a woman is in labor in the middle of the night, how does she go to the primary health center? How? That is not leadership. That's what affects our development in this region. And so it's very important that we think about all these things and not think, the women are not. To be honest with you, I have a problem with always looking for problems when people say these are the issues that affect us. I say, the women are not solving their problems. And it's their fault now. Women are disrespectful. Women are women are that. No, there is nothing wrong with all of that. If you feel women are not speaking loud enough, speak for them now. If you feel a woman cannot be courageous enough, speak for them. Need to build more women's political platforms, more feminist movements. There's a need to build all of that. And while we are building all of that, I don't want the men in the room to constantly say it is the woman's fault that women are not doing well. It is the woman's fault that women are not doing well. I'm seeing your comments, but I will still disagree with it because we are here in a class to learn, to disabuse our minds and not to push agendas. And so in my own opinion, if I have shown you the definition of feminism, I would encourage you to go and read on feminism. I would encourage you to learn what feminist leadership is about, to understand what feminism and what gender balance is what gender and governance means to you as a Nigerian, what it means for development as Nigerians, because that will even help your interventions. You can't say because Nigerians say this is what feminism is about, so that's what feminism is, and you do not even try to educate people. I feel like we're depriving the world of knowledge when we put ourselves in a box and being unwilling to get ourselves out of that box. I will leave it at that, and I will encourage you, please go back to my slides, read my slides, and go and educate yourselves, read more. And I know you're educating yourselves here, but read more on the subjects that you feel are pressing to you, subjects that bother you, subjects that are burning to you. How can I ensure that I am more educated? So when you say feminists are people that are trying to push an agenda, you can say, no, this is what feminism is about. It's about pushing back against systemic oppression. And systemic oppression happens to the best of us. We've seen even in Nigeria, where rich men oppress poor men. It has nothing to do with gender. The feminist is saying that, no, oppression is not a part of our society. We're all equal. Each human being has an intrinsic worth. That's what we talk about human rights. And the Constitution provides that we're all equal and we're all entitled to dignity. Feminist leadership is saying that to enshrine that dignity that we're all entitled to, can you ensure that everybody has equal access to healthcare? Can you ensure everybody has equal access to education? Can we ensure that even the marketplace is friendly towards a woman who has children? That's what it says. Because you go to the market, a woman who has children, the children want to do their homework, there's no place for our children to do homework, there's no place for our children to even clean themselves up. If we are thinking about leadership as it should be, you are knowing that when you are designing a market or a mall, you are providing access for the market women who need to take care of their children after school. Because oftentimes it's the women who get that responsibility. We're not understanding that the fact that a lot of family care is unpaid, women do not have access to the kind of resources that men have. We have this understanding in our leadership process and in our governance process. We will apply leadership differently. I'll leave it at that for now. Waiting for more questions. Shema out. Peace, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma, for that. So I think we're going to take Njoku. Njoku, you can unmute and ask your question. Joko, are you there? You can unmute and ask your question. I've asked you to unmute.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Go
Good
ahead.
evening. Okay, thank you so much for the insightful lecture and presentation. I'm particularly on this question on the side of the Constitution, whereby you said, even as I read from the material you sent across to us, that the women group were not consulted before drafting the 1999 Constitution. And this is against the principles of democracy. But where I want you to clarify is the angle that, because the 1999 Constitution itself has witnessed criticism from different angle and persons, being that many groups were not consulted, not just women group, many groups across the society. And that's why some said it was a falsified document that lied against itself, that it was forced into our truth. So now you saying women group were not consulted, I don't really understand it. Are you with me, ma? Hello?
Okay, let me share my screen again and
Hello?
share that screen. Okay, sorry, 3 more questions. Excuse me, I beg your pardon. Go on, I can hear you.
Okay, so that is on the aspect of the Constitution. It's the women group were not consulted, but generally, the Nigerian as a society, many groups were not consulted. It was
I think you've said that before. Can you, so that other people can get an opportunity to speak, can you just land, please?
Hello, good evening, our presenter. Good evening, colleagues. Mine is more of a contribution to the entire discussion, and perhaps if there are areas where I may raise questions, I would like our facilitator to accordingly respond. Sorry, please. I also wanted to go through the lecture material, but at the time, I never had data to download it. And when I came, I couldn't find it anymore in the group. So permit me to just take up my contributions from the little I was able to get around the topic of discussion today. So the issue of leadership, governance, and gender, I think we are all suffering from a systemic leadership problem in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. And the leadership problem, I don't think it's because women are not given roles to play in leadership, because even the men who are in the role of leadership in the society, what have they done to show for it? We are all suffering under the leadership of men. So I think we have to go back home. We don't train ourselves to become leaders, whether the male gender or the female gender. We don't train ourselves from home to become leaders. We only become opportunist leaders. And that's why we don't lead with any sense of responsibility. And there's no appreciation of what the leadership is. That's why even when you look at, okay, industries that are perhaps, let's say, even female dominated, what's the ratio of women who have actually taken their places right there to galvanize leadership or to champion leadership in those industries? Then another thing I would like to say is women in leadership. I don't believe that the leadership sphere should be dominated by a single gender. I believe in competence. I believe whoever is competent should take the place. Even if I have a female who is more competent than I anywhere, I would prefer she goes first. I'll rather step back for her. So I think another thing that women need to really build in order to find their places in leadership is capacity and competence. Because if you have capacity, you have competence, you show it forth, you showcase it, nobody will go for the mediocre. Nobody will choose the mediocre for your competence in place of the competent person. So I think we should look at this and give opportunity for women who are competent, or rather, let's encourage women to showcase their competence so that they can take their place. For instance, in women's cycles where you advocate for women taking responsibility, tell them, let them showcase whatever capacity they have. They shouldn't just do it within their cycles. Show it forth. That way you create visibility for yourself. And then when opportunity comes, you sign up for it. Definitely you'll be taken, irrespective of, because already your competence has been made visible. And people know, yes, you have the capacity to do this. So I think this is my little contribution. And where I've raised questions, I would like you to also respond accordingly. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we should take Ibrahim so that you can respond at once, ma. So Ibrahim Umar, you can unmute and ask your question.
Okay, good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me, please? Hear me?
Loud and clear, you can go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and Sima, good evening. Thank you for your presentation. My own is regarding the women in leadership or politics in per se. I think my own questions, like, let me state it like this clearly. Number one, I think it's not the constitution that did not favor the women in participating in leadership, or most especially in politics. It's their own self. You will discover that in a political environment, of a leadership environment,
Ibrahim, I'm not hearing anything you're saying.
Can you hear me?
Start all over. I didn't hear anything you said. Your reception is really poor.
Okay. What I'm saying is that in leadership and in politics, I am not seeing anything that the system is not favoring the female aspect. What I'm saying is that a lot of scenarios that women don't want to participate, and after that, they will be saying that they are being left behind. Then, secondly, even if women are given the mantle of the leadership, either in the politics or in any academia or any aspect, the way they will handle the leadership will sound so exaggerated, or like it will look like so harsh in sometimes, and it will look like so moreover than it's supposed to be. Where leniency will come, or where hard hand will come, they will interchange it. Then lastly, women did not usually support women. Women doesn't do solidarity for women. I don't know
Ibrahim,
why.
can you please text your feedback? I'm really struggling to hear you, Ibrahim. I didn't hear anything you said.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe let me explain a bit
Ibrahim
on
Umar,
what
could
he
you
said.
please text your feedback? I don't know if it's my reception or it's my network, but I'm not hearing anything.
Okay,
Please,
we
if
could
you
hear
if
him
you hear me,
loud and clear.
can you explain to me?
Okay, so that means it's my reception.
We could hear him loud and clear. So I think probably it's from your
Please,
end. But if
please
you can,
text it.
let me
Yeah,
just be
text it in the chat box,
okay.
please.
Please,
Okay.
can you explain
Okay.
that?
No, you can go ahead and type it in the chat box if you can, Ibrahim.
Okay.
Okay. Ma, you can go
Sorry,
ahead and
Brian, it's
respond.
my Okay, so Mike, I will start by saying something. Every time I have these gender conversations, I notice a trend. And the trend, and I'm hoping that after today, that the men in this room will be mindful of the trend and they'll be careful about how they interact with these conversations. The trend I notice often is the first one is that women are always silent. The women in the room are silent, and I wonder why. Then the men in the room are always in a hurry to think for the women in saying things like women don't, women shouldn't, women lack, women should, which speaks further to the asymmetry and the imbalance that even exists in the first place and why we always have to constantly do these trainings. It's because men oftentimes, from a place of privilege, speak without understanding the impact of their words on women and the other people in the group. When you say women should, women don't, women, you are not walking in a woman's shoes. You've not had a woman's experience. I have a law degree. I was taught to the Nigerian bar in 2006. I graduated with a 2-1. All my grades were excellent. I only know the course that gave me a 60 that didn't give me a first class. And it was because I was lazy about that particular course. Otherwise, I was close to getting a first class out of Nigerian law school. But guess what happened? 6 years of my life, I used it to take care of children. I remember one time I went to court and I had nobody to look after my baby. And the judge said to me, this baby is crying too much, madam, do something about this child. And so from that moment, I stopped going to court until my child was 2. But when I had my second child at 2, I now had my third. When my child turned 2, I now had my third child. And so in a way, my career was put on pause, quote and unquote, for 6 years. And so for someone to come who hasn't had my experience to say women are not ambitious enough, women don't thrive enough, women lack competence, it's almost a painful thing to hear, especially when it comes from men. Because what they do is they take away from women's experiences and make it look like women don't know what they are doing. Meanwhile, God gave all of us the same brain. Oftentimes, science has shown even that a lot of times women are more intelligent than men even. This is not a gender war. I want to make it clear. When I came into the room to educate us on gender and democracy, it was to open our minds to the possibilities of what leadership can do when both parties are equally involved in the leadership style. It wasn't to bring down men. But I find that a lot of the men who are speaking are bringing women down because they feel like they know women more than women know women. And that is quite sad to learn because we are the future leaders. All of us in this room are people that want to be leaders. And if we are coming with this mindset, even after a session where I've broken it down for you and giving you examples of this kind of systemic oppression, it's almost painful to know how you will engage with women and women in leadership in the future. Because almost have already categorized men to say, and because women are better marketers, let them stay in marketing and let the men do politics and leadership. That is quite painful. And I'm giving you a good example. 6 years of my life was on pause. Now, my colleagues who were called to bar at the same time, probably even left law school with a pass because they are men and they're responsible for their families, probably married women 10, 5 years younger than me, are able to thrive in their careers. And I know that is not it for everybody, but I'm speaking of my own experience and experience of multiple other women who have different experiences, whether it's women who have been sick because of childcare, whether women who have lost, sometimes women even lose body parts because they are having babies. And to now diminish women to say that women are not ambitious enough, women don't do this, women don't. It's very painful to hear, especially because I'm speaking in a room of future leaders. If I tell you that feminist leadership is breaking down systemic oppression, I need you to understand what does feminist leadership mean when she says systemic oppression. Point did I say that women are trying to drag space with women? Contrary, I even said women and men should work as allies. Women and men should work as allies, and it's very important that we do this thing together. I've said this as well, that we need, I never said that the Constitution is against women. I did say it, and if you will remember, 1999 Constitution was designed by a military leader. It was designed by a military leader. If you do history, it was designed by a military leader. So when the military handed over to the civilian government in 1999, Obasanjo took over, we adopted that constitution. There was no input. I'm talking about amending the constitution. There was amending because there was no input by a vast degree of stakeholders, not just women. But I said it in my presentation. Stakeholders were not carried along, and I said it when I remember. I remember I said it was what was I? What I said? A big element of democracy is representation, representing the people, the people picking who represents them, and ensuring that every voice is heard in the process. That is why we do it. Well, that is why we practice a democracy. That's what democracy is about. And whether we want to accept it or not, our democracy is flawed. Our 1999 constitution is flawed. By default of anybody. It's not nobody's fault. But when we realize that there's a problem, we need to fix it. Because if we inherited this constitution, first of all, our previous constitutions were designed by our, I don't want to use the word colonial masters, but that's how our previous constitutions were designed. And every constitution was a modification of the next, a modification of the next, a modification of the next. For those of us who did history and government in secondary school. And so when the 1999 constitution came about, remember that in the 1999 constitution came out, remember that the 1999 elections, prior to the 1999 constitution and prior to Obasanjo coming in as president, we had this all rifts with the political leader. The military government wanted to become a civilian government, and the pushback that followed as a result. And so we just took on the 1999 constitution and we ran with it. And so we need to understand that very much in our leadership style and how we express our leadership. And I think women don't this, women don't that, and we dismiss women. It's very sad to hear that we are very, very dismissive of women. And I hope that at the end of the day, we are able to just go back and really, really try to educate ourselves on what it means to have leadership. Or what it means to have leadership and what it means to engage in the leadership process when it comes to men and women. And I agree with you, Olatunji Timothy. Yes, women need to speak up more, but I need you to understand that in some cases, it is a result of the systemic oppression that they've experienced over time. And if you understand history and understand the things that have happened to women, especially women in Nigeria over time, you will not see another woman come out to be talking like that, because over time, that is how she's been raised. I did a research the other time on elections in the 2019 elections. And we did a research and we're doing some work with the Form 1, Forum of Muslim Women Association Nigeria. That's what it's something on Muslim Women of Nigeria, but it's called Form 1, Federation of Muslim Women in Association Nigeria, something like that. And Form 1 did a research on why do women in Puda not participate in the governance process well enough, especially the elections process. And it was very interesting to note that society over time has made it difficult for them to participate. Women in Puda should not be. So a woman in Puda cannot stand on the same queue as a woman, as a man. A woman in Puda oftentimes will probably want to be influenced by her husband's institution. You know, there are too many things that have impeded women from participating in the process. So if you understand, again with feminist leadership, if you understand the things that impede women from participating in the process, you now know how to create accommodations for them to participate in the process. Is what I'm trying to say. So take, for instance, a woman in Puda that cannot stand on a queue with men during elections. Is it not better if we accommodate her by ensuring that they have a section for women who do not want to be with men? And Dubai has adopted, a lot of countries have adopted, but Dubai, a lot of those Middle Eastern Gulf countries are not democracies. But my point is, create those accommodations for people with special needs. Then also, there's another thing about women in Puda who sometimes have to be influenced by their husband's decisions, because their husband will stand with them on the queue and see who they are voting for. They don't have privacy during the elections process. And so we say, is it possible to design booths for these women in Puda where they can actually have their votes and nobody has to influence their votes? It's also an important thing. If we understand the dynamics of Nigerian society and understand the systemic oppression that has happened to women over time that causes them to be silent, then we will know how to engage with the process. And I will bring it back to feminist leadership. You will know how to engage with the process in a way that is protective of women and is inclusive of women. It's very important for us to know this. So if you're in a room and you see women are not speaking, and I do that all the time. I remember I said it even at the start of this our Q&A session. I said, I want to hear women's voices. Women, please ask questions. Yes, I've not seen any woman raise her hand. Doesn't mean I did not create an opportunity specifically for women to ask questions. And the men will ask. That's the audacity that men have that women need to learn. And if you understand this, those of us who are leaders in this room, we are all leaders in this room. Whenever you have a forum or you have a town hall and you're speaking to people in your community, if you hear 5 men raise their hands, you say, I want to hear the women. This woman, please tell me your problem. With you, we are talking about access to even simple things like water. A woman who goes to the stream far away understands what she has to experience to get water in her community better than a man will understand it. And so you cannot think that if you want to create development in a community, it is only a man you will speak to create development in their communities. Where do you want your hospitals? Where do you want your clinics? Where do you want your schools? Where do you want your markets? You can speak to the man and man say, and this location is nice, it's close to this, it's close to that. A woman will speak to other things that affect them. And that's why we say that development cannot be literally said to occur if only one group or one demographic group is heard. I think I want to stop there. I hope I have corrected that impression on what was said about the Constitution, because what was said about the Constitution is that it is true. Not every voice was heard in another will be moving for amendments and amendments and amendments. We've done the confab, we've done everything. But our Constitution is a flawed document. It is what we have nonetheless. It is working for us nonetheless. It is the ground norm for us right now, but it doesn't mean that there are no rooms for improvement. And when we understand that, then we can engage with it at that level. For instance, the Constitution says that a married woman can give consent. When it says a married woman can give consent, what it has automatically said is that as long as you are married, you have reached the age of adulthood, which is flawed. Because we have communities where 13-year-olds are getting married. Are you saying because she's been forced to marry at 13, she can give consent? That is not a right stop. That is not a right notion. Says a woman cannot transfer citizenship to her husband, but a man can transfer citizenship to his wife. That is also a flawed document. It doesn't speak to the equality that we tend to achieve. And whether we like it or not, all of these things create a mindset on gender, on what the role of the woman is in the community, and what the role of the man is in the community, in our society. And when we understand this, we are able to engage with our democracy in a more informed manner. Thank you very much. Peace, over to you. I see another hand, a few other hands up.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ma. Nuru, please unmute and ask your question.
Good evening, Ma, very much for the presentation. Yes, my own contribution here is that concerning women participation in politics in Nigeria, or talking about the feminism and what have you, yeah, it's really disheartening that women are not being given the chance or the percentage they are supposed to be given. Because I know that I can say that women in politics in Nigeria, they have a kind of they are very more of kind-heartedness more than the men, because it's just that I divided. I have three issues that people or men are considering as issues that hinders women participation, especially in the north. We have the cultural aspect and the social and the religious aspect. But two things are now being considered in the south. But these three, what I want people to understand is that the religious aspect is the issue that is hindering women to participate in politics and positions in the Nigerian politics. But there are some certain chairs or positions that are Islamically women are allowed to contest and to be voted for. But we are only using women when it comes to voting. So you will see women, thousands of them. They are the large number that voted for people, but they are not being given the chance to be voted for. Really, if to say that we give women the percentage, we know that I cannot say, but I know that there are some certain percentage that have been kept for women. But that percentage, I don't know if it is being utilized properly. Is it the problem comes from the political parties or the Nigerian politicians? I don't know where it comes from. So I want Ma to digest these things for us. But I think these are the issues that we have. But women are the ones contributing larger number when it comes to elections or voting. But why is it that we are not being given the proper chance for them to be elected? Thank you.
Okay, let's take Ibrahim Adileke so that you respond at once, Ma. Ibrahim.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you hear me, please?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good responses that you've been providing to some of these questions. Well, also having been in the space, I mean, talking about civil society What was it called?
Is it just from my end? You can't hear you breaking.
Ensure sustainable development, which also talks about inclusion on every side. I would say that the last
We lose Adeleke, or is it just is it my
contributor.
internet again? Because I can't hear Mr. Ibrahim Adeleke.
Sorry.
I think it's from me.
Okay, the last contributor actually touched what I actually want to say, but I maybe not deeply. As the key
Okay, it's gone off now.
Already. Yes, Masha, I think you can just go ahead and respond to the previous.
Yeah, the previous question was from the person who just spoke about Islam and Islam's provisions towards women and why I failed to see the question because he was giving a comment and he was giving feedback on what Islam represents and how women should have a voice. If you can help me with the question, I really appreciate it because I thought he was giving a comment and I had nothing to add, but please tell me the question.
Okay, please, Nura, can you? I think it's in Nura. Yes, please indicate by region so that you can ask your question again. You didn't get that.
Okay, if I may try to summarize, I think he ended with the question asking why women are the majority that votes when it comes to an election, and they are the ones that support others, but they are not given the chance to also be voted for. I think that was like the summary of his question.
I think that is a behavioral science thing and the society thing which I cannot speak to. I got a sense that he was asking, but I thought it was more of a comment. And yeah, I think that's a question I would like to push back to him to answer. Just looking at his community, looking at what are the gaps that make women. And I agree with him. Women come out en masse to vote in a lot of communities. Women are interested in the governance process because these promises are made to them about governance and the need for better government. But they do not know how to take on leadership spaces because they do not understand that they have opportunities to take on leadership spaces. Especially because, like I said, a lot of things, gaps exist. Access to finance, access to media, access income, all of that affects the way they engage with the process. So some of these questions, I want to push it back on us. We're all leaders. I can see that some of us are with APGA, different political parties. Let's ask ourselves, let's do a research and an inward review of ourselves and our organizations and our parties and ask ourselves why are we not engaging women enough in the process? And if we're engaging women in the process, why are women not participating in the process? And I put that challenge to you as well, Electoral College. Please put out a poll or some sort of Google Sheet or Google Doc. I would like to see what the result is about why women don't engage in the process, in any kind of leadership process whatsoever. Because it's very clear, even in this meeting, no woman has asked a question or dropped a comment. And so many things were said about women in this room. Women don't, women shouldn't, women don't support women. No woman has said anything in response, speaking from their experiences, or even speaking about how leadership, what their leadership has been like, or even ask any questions on gender or feminist leadership. So it would be really good to hear if you do a poll. I'm asking you in Electoral College, do a poll, do some Google shit out there, and let's see. Shema out. I think Peace is out of the room now.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yeah, sadly, it's been a conversation about women, but like you stated, no woman has volunteered to speak or contribute. And that says a lot, actually. So I think we no longer have any hand up. Okay, Ibrahim, you're back. Okay, let me ask you to unmute, and I'm sure you'll probably be our last question for today. Please go ahead, Ibrahim.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't know, the network kicked me out earlier. So I was saying that every other you know, recommendation we could make as touching accommodating women in could be catered for and by. There are some which could not be really made. I mean, there are
Yeah.
some accommodation that may not be made because an average because
I ask
they are
Ibrahim to please text your question. I feel like you have a very important point.
in
So if you can
religion,
please text it in the
especially
group chat so we can engage with it. Amy, I missed your
in our holy
question. So if
books
you can
that
push your
quite
question in the group chat again, so I don't know if you dropped the message or you dropped the question. I don't know what you dropped. If you can push it out there again, I would appreciate it. Ibrahim, please push your question up there again. I will appreciate it. I noticed Samsung raised their hands, but it looks like their hands are down. Yeah. So yeah. I don't know, can someone in the electoral college team just read through the message box and see if there's any question we missed so we can address them before we sign out?
Okay, let me just do that. I think most of them are just comments based on what has been spoken. I can't see any.
Okay.
I can't see any.
Okay, good.
I
So
think
wait
there's
for
a lady that
Ibrahim's
said
question.
I'm a woman and I dropped a message earlier. I might not ask questions, but I am fully. So basically just okay, so I think you can just go ahead to wrap up your thoughts for today since we don't have any more questions.
Good. So I am an email away. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Shema Ede on LinkedIn if you want to communicate or if you have any more questions to ask. I will end by saying this though. Amy, I hear you clearly. And I know that you are fully here and you're fully participating. But you know, it will be a source of inspiration for other women to have heard your voice because representation matters. And I say this all the time, representation matters. And this is why I said even the he, she pronouns that we use in our constitution is a bit problematic because we like to see someone like us do well. I remember my desire to lead was by George Bush's Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. I love that woman. I used to dream about being Secretary of State. I didn't even know what that was. And I know Nigeria didn't have a Secretary of State. But Condoleezza Rice was such an inspiration to me. And I want to share my lawyer origin story with you all because I feel it's so powerful. I like to share that story because how do you become a lawyer? And I wish I said I became a lawyer because I wanted to fight injustice and I wanted to rule the world. But interestingly, I became a lawyer because of Claire Huxtable. Depending on our ages, none of us may know Claire Huxtable. There was this show I used to watch when I was growing up called The Cosby Show. And Bill Cosby was a doctor, his wife was a lawyer, Claire, and they had this amazing family. But Claire Huxtable always owned the room. She was a strict disciplinarian. She did her practice well. She did her parenting well. She was an all-round woman. And I remember 5 years old saying, I want to be like Claire Huxtable because I want to be a lawyer so I can be like Claire Huxtable. And Claire Huxtable was my inspiration to study law. And I know that since I decided to become a lawyer and the 20 years I've been a lawyer, almost 20 years, not 20 years yet, but in the almost 20 years I've been a lawyer, I know the kind of impact my work has created for other young women, for my children, and even for the society I live in. And so that's why representation is so important. And that's why we speak about gender, democracy, and governance. And that's why representation is important. I also want to remind us that bad leaders are bad leaders regardless of gender. We can't say, the women don't do well, the women are not competent, women are this, women are that, so we do. And so, but they're also incompetent men leading. And I'm not saying that competence is the criteria. Competence is not the criteria, but we are voting for competent, incompetent men too. So why is the standard different for women? Why is it, no, I'm not going to vote for a woman if I find her incompetent? What is your criteria for finding out a woman incompetent? Is that criteria different from the criteria that is laid out for the man? Those are kind of questions we need to ask ourselves. We need to question our biases. Question the things that inform the decisions that we make. Why do we think that women are not good enough leaders? Why do we hold women by a higher standard than we hold men? Why? Why do we do that? Is it because women are supposed to be mothers? Is the woman the sole Is the woman so responsible to take care of the family? Then what's the man's responsibility? Because I bet you there are a lot more women in our Nigeria today who are breadwinners than there are men. A lot more women are providing for their families just as much as men even. And so we cannot say that women don't make good leaders. Women are not. Yes, there are gaps that women are experiencing. I will not lie to you. The fact that women hold themselves back a lot, the fact that women are not as audacious as men are facts that we are aware of. But can we work together to ensure that we help women to find this audacity? Like I would always say, I watched this amazing film. It's in cinemas now. If you guys can go watch it. It's called Make Mission, and it's a movie on technology and AI. And what I found interesting about that movie was that the lead protagonist was a woman. Her name was Zara, and she was so afraid of pursuing her dreams. Her best friend, Achike, who is a guy, would tell her, go for it. And she'd be like, no, I'm not sure. He said, go for it, go for it. He would go for it. He would probably lose it in some cases, and she would get it. And she would feel bad about getting it over him. And he said to her, very powerful, and I want to leave us with that. He said to her, you deserve good things too. And that one for me was so profound because a lot of women think they don't deserve good things. They don't deserve make mention. MAK. Let me type it in the group chat for you. Please go watch it and tell me what you think. And I would like some of you to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm very active on LinkedIn. So let's talk about all of this leadership and everything else on LinkedIn. But I want to remind every single one of us, the men and especially the women, you deserve good things too. You deserve good things too. You deserve good leadership. You are a great leader. You are a capable leader. You fail fast. We don't all learn overnight. Even the men. The only thing is that the men, when they fail with audacity. We've seen our daddies now. We're not seeing our daddies weak. Men fail with audacity. Women fail and we cower to a corner. And we stew in our failure for so long. But it's important that when we fail, you get up and you go. And I would appeal to the men that understand that there are things in our society that have held women back. It's not because women want to choose to hold themselves back. It's because, exactly, men don't cry. And men, it's okay for men to cry. Jesus wept. For those of us who are Christians in the room. But my point is, oh God, I lost my train of thought right now. But my point is, we need the men to understand that systemic oppression has held women back. Systemic oppression in so many ways have held women to stop women from even launching to do the things they want to do. And so how we can help them is to teach them our audacity, is to teach them that, look, if you fail, pick up the pieces and move. I still struggle with imposter syndrome. My brother will say, Shema, what is wrong with you? Just go out there and do it. My brother is so audacious. I get afraid sometimes. And I find too many things to limit myself with. I limit myself with a lot of things. But I also understand what leadership looks like. And I feel like if I don't use my voice, I will deprive the world of my voice and the kind of leadership that can change the world. And that's what I want to leave us with as everybody in this room, that your voices are so important to changing the world. I will only appeal to us that when we are designing our leadership strategy and our governance strategy, let's design it with a mindset of destroying systemic oppression and bridging gaps that will lead to more equality as opposed to discrimination and inequality. Thank you very much. Shema out.
Shema, wait, not out yet. You can't drop the mic. Thank you so much, my dearest sister. How are you? Knockout lecture. I was listening to you and I was like, oh, why am I male? But I'd say something. Good governance has no gender. People, I think that's the mantra I've tried to sell the most. Good governance has no gender. We need to stop. We need to push. So a lot of people have advised in politics in last 3 or 4 years. I've even concentrated more on women, and not because I chose it, but because I've loved to see. I've been through my own struggles. You remember how it was when I was running for office? I've been through my own struggles, and I find out that their struggles are higher than maybe the guys in the game. So I've tried a lot of work. I've tried a lot to push quite a lot. And if you have gotten into governance positions now, I still advise and help within parameters, because if someone can create an example, another woman will dare, or another youth will dare. And over time, you know the amount of work I've done, Sema. You know that we've done so much work. Me and you, I still remember coming to your office first. We've done a lot of work together. I'm very proud to call you a sister. I know one day you'll be incoming governor of Delta State. So right now, I'm just looking for SSA Intertribal Affairs. I beg, let me book my position now so that We will not argue it then. No, I've said it in public now. You must give me. So, Shema, very, 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 very great conversation. Thank you very much on behalf of the board of the Electoral College, on behalf of the working arm, which is the region, which women have taken over. I can say we have more women in the management team. We are doing justice for boys now in the Electoral College, because boys barely have this thing. But they were choosing, of course, based on output. It wasn't choosing on gender. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us. It's always a great pleasure. And Selma, we are getting you for the next cohort. You're not going anywhere. You have become part of us. So all this English that you want to gist. Meanwhile, me and you have undercover gist. I saw some of your pictures somewhere. Let's not make it public. You know what I'm talking about. In this Tinubu economy, we have to sit down and discuss. Anyway, this is thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I enjoyed speaking with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shema. That was mind-blowing, really. Thank you for accepting to be part of us, like Edie has said. So we look forward to seeing you in the next cohort. So thank you, everyone. Classes continue tomorrow. Have a good night.
Today's class was very poor in attendance. I'd like to see the attendance list. I'd like to see the party that had the least people there. I'd obviously like to see everything. Tomorrow I'll issue the punishment for that. I think chairman think I'm joking. Yeah, this is the autocratic ED has returned. So anyway, everyone have a lovely evening. Lisa, please get to that quickly. Thank you, everyone.
Noted, Edie.